served 5 years in prison for robbery and says it was the best thing that ever happened to him.
He's going to be in trouble here as long as he stays inside.
Thank God I survived the prison. Thank God I survived 3 separate stabbings. Thank God I survived 9 years of parole and probation at 24 years old until my mid-30s. Thank God that I had boxing.
He was raised in the projects. Bernard Hopkins lost his way growing up on the dangerous streets of Philadelphia. In the urban jungle, it was survival of the fittest, and even the fittest came away with scars. By the time Bernard was approaching adulthood, he had survived 3 stabbings. The street life finally caught up to Hopkins after an armed robbery sent him to prison. It was a scary and unstable environment full of paranoia and sudden ruthless violence. Bernard found a home in the prison's boxing program. By the time he was released, he'd won 95 fights behind bars. As he left the penitentiary, the warden told Bernard he'd see him again soon, implying the young convict would be back behind bars before long. But Hopkins would lose his first fight as a free man.
I'm going to run, I'm going to train, I'm going to eat right, I'm going to get early sleep, and I'll lose my first fight. Damn! Yeah. Damn!
After dedicating his life entirely to boxing and Islam, Bernard never saw the inside of a cell again. He trained like a warrior monk, but his monastery was a gym in Philadelphia. His teacher was just like him. Brother Nazim Richardson grew up on the Philly streets, found God and boxing behind bars, and kept on the straight and narrow. Under Nazim's tutelage, Bernard won his next 22 fights in a row and fought his way into title contention. Bernard was lucky enough to fight for a vacant championship, but was unlucky enough for his opponent to be the freakiest athlete in boxing history.
And referee Steve Smoger tells which is not likely to hold the attention of this position from which Muhammad Ali is doing a hard time for a chain snatching.
Roy Jones Jr. had been boxing since childhood, while Bernard took up the trade in his late teens.
Jumping in, but he did set up a straight right hand. Jones fights.
Roy was also unequivocally the fastest middleweight in history.
World title of his career. Get out of the way.
While Hopkins fought a tough and gritty performance, he was no match for Roy's overwhelming speed and unorthodox brilliance. Bernard did his best, but didn't know how to handle that kind of speed yet.
Roy Jones Jr.
It would take Roy vacating and another year of seasoning, but Bernard was developing rapidly, putting the lessons of the pro game to use.
He's going to be in trouble here as long as he stays inside.
Hopkins.
Third time was the charm for B-Hop.
Hopkins got to do a little bit better than he did in that first round. He's got to take command.
Ricardo stays and Hopkins continues to pour it on.
But once he won that title off Segundo Mercado, he refused to let it go. He was nearly 30 years old already. The Executioner begins his reign of terror with 2 horrifying knockouts. His title defense was a short and sweet record KO over Steve Frank.
And hope to fight it later in the fight.
that on themselves, but I want to be the undisputed middleweight champion of the world. We haven't had one since the 80s. I'm focused, I'm back, and I just want to prove to the world by my performance. That's all I want to be judged by, is my performance, that I'm the best middleweight in the world.
Then Hopkins took a few rounds, but still managed to bounce Joe Lipsy's head off the floor in 4.
It's over. Mitch Halpern, stop this fight. This fight is over. You're right.
Bernard truly learned the game as champion. In his early reign, it was dedication and determination that won him fights. He was a defensively sound, high-volume puncher. Bernard Hopkins, as middleweight champion, grew his skills to match his grit.
Because he looks like, as you said, he could go 20.
As a champion, you might have to go down in the dirt to get a win. Hopkins and Antoine Eccles had 2 of the greatest gutter wars in middleweight history.
Very, very balanced out fight. He's becoming a complete.
But as Bernard points out, Joe Giardello, he didn't count as a knockdown, but Hopkins was knocked.
It is the perfect example of the fact that in a fight, the rules are made to be broken.
Banks him into the ropes with a chopping right hand inside. And they're still swinging after the bell.
Experience. Whereas once he gets tired, he can fight off of his experience. Whereas Hopkins will do things that's still the real thing.
Here was a terrific straight right hand by Hopkins.
Right hand.
It had it all, from headbutts and low blows, hitting on the break, rabbit punching, and even a takedown which seemed to dislocate Bernard's shoulder. Rather than win by disqualification, Bernard got up and stopped his rowdy challenger the second time around. B-Hop kept in perfect shape at middleweight, and soon a star rose to meet him. Felix Trinidad was a sensation from San Juan, Puerto Rico, a knockout artist with a vicious left hook. The former welterweight and pound-for-pound star rising to meet Bernard, now a grizzled old vet on the verge of a record. He was attempting to break the record of middleweight great Carlos Monzon, who defended his championship 14 times. 2 events defined the pre-fight buildup. In an effort to get under Trinidad's skin, Bernard threw the Puerto Rican flag to the floor during a press conference in Puerto Rico, which caused a riot, which Bernard was forced to flee from. Just 4 days out from the fight, Bernard watches from a skyscraper hotel room as a pair of planes hit the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. The fight was postponed. When the lights flicker on at Madison Square Garden for the first time since the attacks, Hopkins versus Trinidad was the fight a mourning city came to see. It would go down as one of the most perfect performances in history. A great fighter will never fight to an opponent's A-game. For Felix, that meant mid-range, where he can torque into that hook and open up with combinations. B-Hop had the longer reach and a more complete grappling game. Hopkins made sure his right hand stayed pinned to his eyebrow.
Hopkins tries to fire back immediately. Here around a move like this is a good idea that he did weigh in at 157. So far,
He fought his way into and out of clinches
standing in front of Trinidad.
and used his reach at range. He posted the greatest performance of his career. And knocked Felix out, baiting the hook to take on the gloves before turning into a short right hand with all his weight committed. Felix fell and couldn't carry on.
But I want to be judged by my peers, not by me reading my own articles. I think when it's all done, Bernard Hopkins will be known as one of the greatest middleweights that came along at all times. In my heart, I knew that I would get another chance in life to redeem myself from what I used to be into what I am now. I can show example not only for boxing, but for people in general. Larry, I am the American dream. I am the American story.
Bernard Hopkins was already 36. He carried on calmly, owning middleweight and schooling every young contender that came his way.
Hopkins at 38 years of age. I know he's not getting any younger, but boy, he sure doesn't look like he's getting any older either.
Including another pound-for-pound star coming up from welterweight. While Felix had been a huge favorite over Hopkins, Oscar de la Hoya was not.
All the time, very significant. You have to hustle him. He's one of the few guys that not only has power.
Because the world saw how Hopkins handled a smaller combination puncher before, which was easily.
Saying this is the worst I've ever seen you. I hit you pretty well, and then it's over.
I don't know what Bernard's having his left hook for to the body, but that's how patient this guy is.
Makes you feel confident about one.
It was a virtual rerun of the Trinidad game plan.
Oh, there's a good one underneath the elbow.
Outside or inside, but never in mid-range.
Last round and in this round for Bernard.
It was a body punch that folded the Golden Boy in the ninth.
Oh, he really whacked him with that left hook.
The executioner, Hopkins.
B-Hop was finally beaten at middleweight by Jermaine Taylor after 20 successful title defenses at the age of 40.
And new, undisputed middleweight champion of the world.
His work rate was naturally slowing, but his dedication never dipped. So rather than retire, Bernard gained 15 pounds and sweeps every round off Antonio Tarver to win the light heavyweight championship. By now, Hopkins was in a second era of his career, on the wrong side of 40 and fighting bigger guys. The media worried any fight could be his last. Despite being an ever-aging underdog, Bernard Hopkins kept up in tip-top shape with a mind no light heavyweight could keep up with. Every fight, Bernard proves the doubters dead wrong. The world kept expecting the wheels to fall off the oldest show in the fight game. Year after year, B-Hop was fighting and mostly beating world-class light heavyweights.
I don't fight just to be fighting. I did enough of that on Philadelphia streets in Philadelphia for free. So yes, I will fight anybody.
Fights his way into a title shot at age 45. He challenged WBC champion Jean Pascal, a 28-year-old unorthodox puncher. He was 18 years younger.
Hopkins continues to defy the advancing years by schooling championship-level fighters who are almost young enough to be his sons. Hopkins, he got nailed by a counter.
Pascal caught Hopkins early, dropping him for the first time in ages.
Go ahead and try.
Thousand on hand here. And a counter right.
A feat Pascal repeated in the third.
Get to the corner.
George Foreman used to say that stuff all the time. It was a good hook by Hopkins to the body. That was a beautiful punch.
And that got the attention.
But the longer Hopkins hung around, the more he took over.
Deep to the body.
Swept the rest of the rounds in economical style. Put Pascal through 8 rounds of college. When the final cards are read, it's a disappointing draw. Hopkins was given an immediate rematch. To hype the second fight, Bernard Hopkins put on a clinic of another kind. In the face-off before the fight, Bernard Hopkins put on one of the greatest trash-talking performances in boxing history.
Anybody could be knocked out, but it's not what happened, it's what happens next. And what happened next is you bitched. You ran, you didn't fight, I forced the fight, and from the 5th round to the 12th round, I was in your ass and you was ready to quit, and you was blowing and puffing and went to your corner like a rag doll, done, defeated, and knew that you lost that fight. Promised the world that you would fight every round hard like you fight the first 2 or 3 rounds. And so he's gonna be on that short list of the young deers that I gotta go ahead and spank because he got a little fresh. And when you get a little fresh, I gotta check you.
All right, Chad, thank you very much for spending time with us. On by Hopkins. Lead right hand.
Sure enough, Pascal fades after the 4th, and Hopkins does more than dominate another fight. He taunted his young opponent, doing some between-round exercise.
Now Hopkins is doing push-ups in the ring to try to embarrass his younger opponent. Pascal lands the right hand. And again,
That night, he became the oldest boxing champion ever to live at 46.
and if he makes it to the bell, in all likelihood, he's going to make it happen.
The executioner, Hopkins.
A record he'd finally stopped breaking in 2014, after making his final title defense at the age of 49. He went from a teenager let loose in the streets to finding himself in the center of the sweet science. Every record he set his eyes on, he shattered. Bernard Hopkins is living, breathing proof that for the truly committed, age is nothing but a number.